I just found out my wife has been secretly transferring $300, $0 from our joint account to her sister's offshore account. And now she's claiming I have no right to claim our family home worth $750, $0 in the divorce because she says it's hers, even though I helped pay for it. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how I found out my wife was cheating on me, but here we are. The thing is, it all happened so suddenly, like a lightning strike out of nowhere. One day everything was normal, well, as normal as it could be, and the next, I uncovered a web of lies, betrayal, and money that made my head spin. Honestly, I still can't believe I missed all the signs for so long. Her name, Jessica. We'd been married for 10 years and I thought we had a good life. We had a nice house, a couple of cars, good jobs, and 2 kids who are the light of our lives. But somewhere along the way, I started noticing little things. Her phone buzzing at odd hours, her being more secretive about her computer, and her brushing off my questions like I was some kind of paranoid. Still, I brushed it off. Everyone has their secrets, right? Or so I thought. Then about 2 weeks ago, I decided to check our joint bank account, something I'd never done before. I'd always trusted her, or at least I thought I did. I wanted to see the recent transactions because she'd been acting weird lately, canceling plans, avoiding intimacy, and snapping at me over nothing. When I looked at the statement, I saw a transfer of $300, $0. My stomach dropped. It was transferred to an offshore account and I had no idea she'd been siphoning money like that. That's when I started digging deeper. I've always been cautious with money, but Jessica had been handling most of the finances lately, saying she was more organized and knew what she was doing. Turns out she was lying. She'd been secretly transferring money and I had no clue. The worst part. She kept claiming she was saving for a rainy day, but I found out she was funneling that cash to her sister's offshore account, an account I'd never even heard of before. And then the real shocker came. I found out Jessica had been cheating on me too. I stumbled across some texts, some explicit messages, and even some photos from her secret phone. It was a guy named Mark, some guy she'd met at a conference months ago. She'd been meeting him in secret, going out late, lying about where she was. I saw the text where she told him she hated her marriage, that I was boring and useless, and that she was just using me for the money. Honestly, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. All these years I thought we were solid, that we had something real. I was blindsided. It wasn't just the affair, it was the betrayal of our trust, the money she'd stolen, and the way she lied about everything. I kept asking myself how I missed all this. How could I have been so blind? I confronted her that night, and the way she lied, spun her stories, and blamed me for not paying enough attention made me furious. I just wanted to shake her and scream, "How could you do this?" But even as I was angry, I felt this crushing sadness too. I loved her, or I thought I did. I built a life with her, and now it felt like it was crumbling apart. I didn't know what to do. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and broken. I kept replaying everything in my head, the good times, the bad times, and now this mess. It felt like my whole world was crashing down around me, and I had no idea where to go from here. That's where I am now. I know I need to make some decisions, but honestly, I'm just trying to breathe and figure out what's real anymore. I never thought I'd be the guy writing this kind of story, but here I am, trying to process the fallout of someone I trusted turning out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. After I found out about the money and the affair, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and my mind kept racing. I kept going over every detail, every moment I'd missed, every sign I'd ignored. Jessica kept insisting she was just stressed and that the money transfer was for her sister's business, even though her story made no sense. She was good at lying, that's for sure. She'd always been bitchy when cornered, throwing tantrums and denying everything, but I wasn't buying it anymore. That night I decided I had to confront her face to face. I wanted the truth from her, the real story. I sat her down in the living room and she looked at me with that fake innocent face like she hadn't done anything wrong. She crossed her arms and started with her usual excuse. "You're overreacting. I told you I was stressed. You don't understand how hard it's been for me lately." Yeah, right. She was a master at spinning stories, but I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I asked her directly about the money. She looked surprised, then started to lie, saying she was saving for emergencies or investing in something she didn't want to tell me about. I didn't buy a word of it. I knew she'd been hiding something. I told her I knew about the transfer, how I saw the bank statement, the offshore account, and she started to get defensive. Her voice rose and she snapped, "It's none of your business. I can do what I want with my sister's money. You have no right to control me or tell me how to handle my family." That's when I saw the full bitch come out. She was furious that I found out, furious that I was questioning her, and she kept spinning her lies. She called me paranoid, jealous, and accused me of spying on her, like I was some kind of stalker. Honestly, it was like talking to a wall. Every time I pressed her, she'd get nastier, throwing accusations back at me, saying I was a terrible husband, a terrible father, that I didn't pay enough attention to her. But I knew the truth now. She'd been lying and cheating, and she'd stolen a fortune from us. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The betrayal was a heavy weight on my chest. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd loved her, trusted her. I'd given her everything, and she'd repaid me with lies, money, theft, and a secret lover. I felt angry, hurt, and betrayed all at once. But underneath that, there was also a strange sense of clarity. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I needed to decide what to do next. I started thinking about revenge, not just emotional revenge, but something more concrete. I wanted her to feel what I felt. I wanted her to see that I wasn't a fool, that I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I knew I had to be smart about it, though. Jessica was manipulative, and I had to outsmart her if I wanted her to pay for what she'd done. That's when I started planning my move step by step to make sure she'd regret crossing me. But even as I plotted, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, the person I loved. And now I was left with a broken trust, a mountain of lies, and a future that looked uncertain at best. I kept asking myself, how did I get here? How did everything go so wrong? I still don't have the answers, but one thing's clear: Jessica's not getting away with this. Not without paying a price. And I'm going to make sure of that. After the initial shock wore off, I started to really dig into what Jessica had been hiding. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd come clean. I needed proof, solid evidence that I could use if it came down to legal stuff, or just to make her realize I wasn't going to be played anymore. I knew she was clever, maybe even smarter than me when it came to hiding things, but I also knew her weak spots. Money had always been her thing, her way of controlling everything. Now, I had to use that against her. First thing I did was get access to her phone and her computer. I knew she'd set up passwords, but I'd seen her slip up before. I found an app on her phone that she used to hide messages, one of those secret chat apps. I went through her emails, her texts, her social media. It was a mess of lies. She had secret conversations with Mark, talking about how she hated her marriage, how she wanted out, and how she was planning to leave everything behind. I even found some deleted messages she thought she'd erased, but I managed to recover them. It was clear she'd been planning her escape for months. In her bank accounts, I found more transfers, small ones to other offshore accounts, probably to cover her tracks. She kept telling me she was just trying to secure her future, but I knew better. This was about running away, about leaving me with the mess she created. I also discovered that she'd been funneling money into her sister's account, which was a shell company she set up offshore. I had no idea she was capable of this level of deception. It was like she was playing a different game, one I didn't even know existed. I started talking to some lawyers, trying to get a handle on what my rights were and what I could do about the house, the money, everything. Jessica kept insisting she owned her half of everything and that I had no claim to the house. It was worth about $750, $0, and I helped pay for it, paid the mortgage, put down the initial deposit. But she said that because she was the owner on paper, she could do whatever she wanted. That made my blood boil. I helped build that life. I worked my ass off to pay the bills, to give us a future. Now she was trying to claim it all as hers because she was the legal owner. I knew I had to get ahead of her. I started secretly recording our conversations when she was at her worst, lying, yelling, trying to manipulate me into thinking I was overreacting. I also started gathering the financial documents, the bank statements, the transfer records, everything I could find. I didn't want her to have any room to deny what she'd done. I was furious that she'd stolen from us, betrayed me, and then turned around and played the victim. That bitch had some nerve. Meanwhile, Jessica was still acting like she was the victim. She'd throw tantrums, call me names, and accuse me of trying to control her. She'd say, "You're just jealous," or "You don't understand what I'm going through." She even tried to gaslight me, claiming I was crazy for thinking she'd been unfaithful or stealing money. But I had the proof now, and I was ready to use it. I wanted to expose her for who she really was, the lying, manipulative, money-hungry bitch who thought she could get away with everything. Every time I thought I'd gotten enough evidence, something new would pop up. I found receipts from her secret dates, hotel bills, even photos of her with Mark. It all added up to one thing. Jessica had been planning her escape for months. She'd been cheating, stealing, and lying to everyone, including me. I felt like I was living in someone else's nightmare. I started to plan my next move carefully. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, not with money, not with the house, not with the truth. I was going to confront her with everything, and if she tried to lie her way out of it, I had the evidence to back me up. I wanted her to realize that she couldn't keep running from her lies. I also knew I had to protect myself legally, getting a lawyer, maybe even filing for divorce. I wasn't going to let her take everything I worked for, especially after all I'd done. The thing is, I still feel this weird mix of anger and sadness. I'm furious she betrayed me like this, but I also feel like I've lost someone I once loved. It's hard to accept that the woman I married turned out to be someone so different behind closed doors. But I'm not going down without a fight. I want her to pay for what she's done, and I want to rebuild my life one way or another. The truth is out now, and I'm just getting started. Once I had all the evidence lined up, I knew I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I had to face her directly, lay everything out on the table, and see how she'd react. I scheduled a meeting at the house, telling her I wanted to talk. Big mistake, maybe, but I figured I needed to see her face when I dropped the bomb. She was already acting tense, snapping at the kids, throwing around her usual "I don't have to explain myself" attitude. When I sat her down in the living room, I could see the panic behind her eyes. I laid out everything I knew about the offshore accounts, the transfers, the texts with Mark, the secret meetings. I even played some of the recordings I'd made of her trying to manipulate me, her insults, her lies. Her face twisted into a mix of anger and disbelief. She started to deny everything, calling me crazy, accusing me of hacking her phone. "You're just jealous," she spat. "You don't understand how hard I've been working. You're just paranoid because..." I've been stressed, but I had the proof. I showed her the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the photos. I told her I knew about her affair, that I knew she'd been lying to me for months. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked genuinely scared, like she realized she'd pushed her luck too far. Her reaction was classic Jessica, bitchy, defensive, trying to spin her way out of it. She started crying, playing the victim, saying I was overreacting, that I was trying to control her, and that her actions didn't mean anything. She claimed she was just trying to protect her sister, that the money was for her future, and that the affair was nothing serious. I couldn't believe the level of her lies. She was good at covering her tracks, but this time her lies just made her look more guilty. I felt my blood boiling. I told her she had no right to claim the house, especially since I helped pay for it, mortgage, renovations, everything. She insisted it was hers, even though I was the one who put down the initial deposit and kept up with the payments. She said, "It's my name on the deed. That's all that matters." I reminded her that we'd built that house together, that I'd been there for every mortgage payment, every repair, every late night working extra hours. She just sneered and said I was trying to take what's hers. It was at that moment I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. She was a master manipulator, and I could see she was trying to turn everything around on me, make me look like the bad guy. But I wasn't going to let her. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to take everything I could, my share of the house, my rights to the money she stole, and whatever else I could get. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions. She started to scream, calling me controlling, a terrible husband, a loser. She said I was just jealous of her success, that I didn't understand her. but deep down I knew she was just trying to save herself. She knew she'd crossed a line and that I'd finally caught her. I was calm, cold even, telling her that this was just the beginning. I wasn't going to let her get away with stealing from us, cheating on me, and lying every step of the way. The next few days were a whirlwind. I contacted a lawyer, started the divorce process, and began gathering everything I needed to make a case. I also told my parents, my closest friends, what had happened. The support was overwhelming, but it also made me realize how much I'd lost: trust, respect, the woman I thought I knew. I kept feeling this strange mix of anger and sadness, like I was mourning someone who was still alive but no longer the same person. Jessica kept trying to manipulate the situation, calling me names, accusing me of trying to ruin her life. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was breaking up the family and ruining her future. But I knew better. I'd seen her true face now, and I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. I was done being the fool. I was done being the one who got played. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen next. Part of me still hopes she'll come clean, admit everything, and maybe we can fix this, but deep down I know that ship has sailed. It's just a matter of time before everything's out in the open and I take back what's mine. I've learned a lot about trust, betrayal, and how some people will do anything to protect themselves, even if it means destroying someone else in the process. And I swear, I'll make damn sure she pays for it. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and trying to keep my head above water. I was in full-on investigation mode, pushing every lead, double-checking every bank statement, and making sure I had enough evidence to back up my claims. Jessica, of course, kept up her act, playing the victim, crying, throwing tantrums, and trying to manipulate the situation any way she could. But I was no fool anymore. I saw through her lies and knew exactly how deep her deception went. I hired a lawyer who specialized in divorce and asset division. We went over everything: my contributions, her lies, the offshore accounts, the house. She kept claiming she owned her half, but I had proof that I helped pay the mortgage from day one. The house was our family's home, built on my hard work and savings, and I wasn't about to let her walk away with everything. My lawyer told me I had a solid case, especially with the evidence I gathered. That gave me some sense of relief, but I also knew this was only the beginning. Jessica's behavior grew more erratic. She started to lash out at the kids, yelling at them, accusing me of poisoning their minds. It was clear she was trying to turn the kids against me to make them see her as the victim. I was furious. I sat the kids down and explained in age-appropriate terms that sometimes adults make mistakes and that everything would be okay. I didn't want them to think their mother was the enemy, but I also had to protect them from her manipulative tactics. Meanwhile, I kept digging. I contacted the offshore bank where Jessica transferred the money. I hired a private investigator to track her movements when she met Mark. I even found out that she'd been secretly visiting a luxury condo downtown, where Mark had a place. It was a slap in the face. She'd been living a double life, hiding her affair and her theft right under my nose. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. One night I caught her trying to delete some files from her laptop. She was frantic, trying to cover her tracks. I confronted her then and there, and her reaction was priceless. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, jealous, and crazy. She said I was trying to ruin her life because I was jealous of her success. I stared at her and said, "You think I don't see what you're doing? You've been lying from the start. You've been cheating, stealing, and manipulating everyone around you." I told her I had enough proof to bury her, and I was going to make sure she paid for every lie, every dollar she stole, every moment she lied to me. It was a turning point. She realized I wasn't backing down. That night, she finally broke down and admitted some of the truth. She'd been planning her escape for months, that Mark was just a part of it, and that she'd been trying to get her hands on the house and the money. But she still refused to fully admit to everything. That's when I knew I had to act fast. I filed for divorce immediately, and I also filed for a freeze on the assets, especially the offshore accounts. I wanted to make sure she couldn't just run away with everything. I also made it clear I was fighting for custody of the kids because I didn't want her to use them as pawns. The more I found out, the more I realized how dangerous she could be if she was left unchecked. She'd already lied and betrayed so much. I wasn't going to let her keep doing it. In the midst of all this chaos, I also started to reflect on what I'd learned. Trust is fragile. People can hide their true selves behind a veneer of normalcy. And sometimes you don't see the cracks until it's too late. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. So much anger I didn't think I could contain it. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to be strong for myself and for the kids. Jessica's lies had almost destroyed everything we built, but I was determined not to let her win. The most shocking thing was realizing how far she was willing to go. To cover her tracks, she lied about everything: her feelings, her intentions, her financial situation. And now, as I prepared to take her to court, I knew I had the upper hand. I had the truth, the evidence, and the legal backing. I'd fight for my rights, for the house, for the money she stole, and for my dignity. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours, especially when the person you trusted most turns out to be your biggest enemy. The court date finally arrived, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I knew I had everything on my side: proof of her lies, the financial records, the recordings, the evidence of her affair. Still, facing her in court was daunting. Jessica showed up looking like she'd been crying all night, her usual bitchy attitude replaced with a desperate, almost pathetic expression. She tried to spin her story one last time, claiming she was the victim, that I was trying to ruin her, that everything was just a misunderstanding. But I had all the facts. I stood there, calm, collected, and ready to finally put this nightmare behind me. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out everything: the stolen money, the offshore accounts, the house contributions, the affair, and Jessica's manipulations. Jessica's lawyer argued that she was entitled to half the assets, including the house, because she was on the deed. But I pointed out that I had contributed equally, if not more, through hard work and savings. I presented the evidence of her secret transfers, her illicit relationship, and her attempts to hide everything. It was clear she'd been lying for months, and the judge saw through her. In the end, the court awarded me a significant portion of the assets: my share of the house, the money she'd stolen, and the offshore accounts. Jessica's attempts to claim ownership of everything she wanted crumbled under the weight of the facts. She was furious, screaming and crying, but it didn't matter. Justice was served, and I finally felt a sense of closure. The aftermath was a blur of moving out, sorting through the mess, and trying to rebuild. I filed for full custody of the kids, knowing Jessica's manipulative nature and her history of lying and betrayal made her unfit to be the primary guardian. I stayed strong through it all, leaning on friends and family for support. The house was sold, and I used the proceeds to start over, paying off debts and securing a new place for me and the kids. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned. Trust is fragile, and sometimes people hide who they really are until it's too late. Jessica's betrayal taught me that money can corrupt, and love can be easily shattered by lies and greed. But it also showed me that resilience and clarity matter. I refuse to let her define my future. I'm rebuilding my life, step by step, with a newfound sense of strength and awareness. Most importantly, I've come to understand that revenge isn't about hurting her physically or emotionally. It's about reclaiming what's rightfully yours, standing up for yourself, and making sure the truth comes out. Jessica thought she could get away with everything: cheating, stealing, lying, but she was wrong. I took back control, and now I'm finally free from her shadow. This has been one of the hardest experiences of my life, but I know I'll come out stronger on the other side. And for anyone else in my shoes, just remember: never ignore the signs, trust your instincts, and always fight for what's yours.